In keeping with our singleness of purpose and our third tradition, which states, the only requirement for AA membership is a desire to stop drinking, we ask that all who participate confine their discussion as it pertains to alcoholism. We have a speaker will share his experience, strength, and hope for approximately 45 minutes. We ask that out of respect for our speaker, you please remain seated until he is finished. It is my pleasure tonight to introduce our speaker, Tom.
So, I'm Tom, I'm an alcoholic. Isn't it funny how they do that in Florida too? Well, who's from Florida that brought that here? Okay, I want to know. Yeah. So, I just want to say that it's always an honor and a privilege to be able to stand in front of a group of my peers in Alcoholics Anonymous, and you asked me to come here and tell you my story, and to me there's nothing better than that. I've been telling my story for a long time, and sometimes I might tell somebody else's story. If you would just try not to compare yourself to me and identify with what I'm talking about. And I love a bunch of old-timers, and I can stand in front of them, you know, and tell jokes all night and make them all laugh and everything else, but the most important people in this room tonight are the guys and the gals that just got here, you know, and that's who I really want to do the talk for, you know. My sobriety date is December the 9th, 1983, and I have more than one home group. I go to Florida still for a few months every winter, and I have a home group there that's been my home group 24 years. It's called Boca Men's Recovery in Boca Raton, Florida, and I have afterwards here, and I don't know, I feel like I've been adopted in about 4 or 5 home groups here, you know, for some reason. But the Prescott group, and I love service, you know. I've always done service. You know, I love Intergroup. Currently, I'm the treatment facilities chair for Intergroup here in the Prescott area, and it's the light of my life to be able to do that. The reason that I am so involved in service is because that's the way I was brought up in Alcoholics Anonymous. I was brought up that way. I had a sponsor that used to say, you know, he told me, he said, if you have a sponsor and you don't have a home group, you need to fire the sponsor. In other words, he was telling me, go get a home group or find another sponsor. Because, you know, I never, you know, and see, I have a background, you know, a background that you should know about. I didn't get here 36 years ago. I got here 46 years ago. You know, I found my way through the door at 21. I'd started at 13. Then I don't like to tell a big drunk-a-log, but I want you to know something about me. I was born in Springfield, Illinois, 1952. I belonged to the CIA, Catholic Irish Alcoholics. And I don't know why. I get these ideas that come to me, you know, and I don't know where they come from. Well, I should say I do know where they come from, but I'm afraid that you'll believe that I'm crazy if I really told you where they came from. That's the bottom line. But I know they come from God. Because God's been working in my life for a long time. And He puts things in my head. And all week He's been putting this story in my head, and I don't think about what I'm going to talk about, so I don't know what's going to come out of my mouth when I get up here. I really don't, because that's the way I was taught. And I was brought up in AA by people who were speakers, and they taught me to be a speaker. And that's what they taught all of us to do, because that was carrying the message. We had to get up in front of people right away, within a few months, and start telling our story. We weren't allowed to sit on our hands or keep our mouth shut. I did that for years, and it's real easy. We used to call it death row back there where Oscar's sitting in death row. Don't give me any crap, Oscar. There won't be none. And, so you got to get active, if you're going to do this thing, then you got to jump in with both feet. I didn't do that. I sat back in death row for a long time. I came to Alcoholics Anonymous, and I came for all the wrong reasons. I didn't come to get sober. That's not what I came for. I came to get out of trouble. That's what I came to do, is to get out of trouble, And that trouble started a long time ago. Because, you see, I never crossed over any line into alcoholism. See, that might be somebody else's story, but it's not my story. And I can't tell you any story but my story. And I know plenty of alcoholics who crossed over a line into alcoholism. I'm not one of them. I believe I was born an alcoholic. And the reason I believe I was born an alcoholic was because I can't remember a time in my life when I wasn't restless, irritable, and discontented. As far back in my childhood, as far back as I can go, I can remember that. I can remember that I never felt at home. I never felt at ease. I never felt like I belonged. I always wanted to be somebody else and be someplace else and doing something else. I didn't want to be who I was. I didn't like who I was. And I didn't play well with other children. If you made me mad, if I struck out at bat, and you laughed, I might throw the bat at you. I didn't want to be taught anything that I didn't want to learn. So I didn't get along with teachers very well either, because I was only interested in what I was interested in. I wasn't interested in what they wanted to teach me. And as a result, I started to figure out that I couldn't be the best at being good. See, there's this thing about me is I have to be the best. I have to be better than you. I have to be able to feel like, I'm on top of the world, Ma. And so I couldn't be good at being good, so I learned how to be good at being bad. And by the time I was in the 5th grade, way before I ever picked up a drink or a drug, I was already running with gangs. Gangs that, little grease back your hair, black leather jacket wearing, brass knuckle carrying, switchblade carrying little hoodlums. 50s types hoodlums, okay? My boys, I have 2 boys, one's 30, the other one's 26. They said to me one time, Dad, you were OG. I said, what's that, old gold cigarettes or something? They said, no, original gangster. I said, yeah, if you think so, What I really was a snot-nosed punk. That's what I really was, And, by the time I got big enough, at 13, I found a bottle of wine in the woods, and I sucked that bottle of wine down, and I fell in love. And it took all those feelings that I had away from me. I fell in love with that feeling. And from then on, all I wanted was more of that. More of that feeling. See? And so we started stealing. We were thieves anyway. So it was easy just to start stealing booze. And stop stealing candy bars. When I was a kid, we used to say, candy's dandy, but liquor's quicker. So we started stealing liquor and drinking all the time. And then, the mid-60s came along, and most of you, especially us old gray-haired people, we know what the mid-60s brought, They brought a new revolution. You don't have to be a fallen down, sloppy, stinking drunk, you know, puking your guts out kid, waking up in the weeds and blackouts. You could be a hip, slick, cool doper. And that's what I became, you know. You can't take that out of my story. That's part of my story. You know, for the purpose of identification, you need to know that. So then I started stealing drugs instead of stealing booze. Now I'm breaking into drug warehouses. And my buddy's older brother was on Quezon, the Battle of Quezon. Was a Devil Dog Marine in '68, came back, and we were robbing barbiturates, and he told me his brother was shooting reds all day and drinking a bottle of whiskey and a case of Bud, you know, just to keep his habit down, and he'd go for that. And he proceeded to show us how he could do that, and asked me if I wanted to do that. And when I saw how fast, because see, I was always interested in getting to where I wanted to go fast. I didn't want to wait around to where I wanted to go. You see, I never had a drink in my life that I didn't get drunk. I wouldn't drink if I couldn't get drunk. That's the reason I drank. I drank for the effect. I drank to get drunk. I don't know what it is to be a social drinker. I have kind of an idea because, you know, I had a woman I used to live with in my 20s. She was president of the Bartenders Union in Peoria, Illinois, and she had the best hotel in town, the Pier Marquette, and she'd had Saturday nights off because she was president of the union, and she'd go out to the bar with me on Saturday night, but I went to the bar every night. She liked to drink schnapps on the rocks in a jigger, you know, a little jigger like that, and the ice used to melt in her glass. I never had a drink in my life that the ice melted in my glass. I don't think I ever had a soft drink that the ice melted in my glass. I don't drink like that. And, you know, I drank beers and shots, you know, and I'd be standing there, and the bar would be 3 deep, you know, on Saturday night. And I'd be throwing down those beers and those shots, trying to get as drunk as fast as I can. And so after a couple hours, I probably put 15 or so away, and I'd look over at her, and she'd be nursing on her third schnapps on the rocks after 2 hours, you know, with the melted ice in the glass. And I'd say to her, "Honey, you want another drink?" And she'd go, "Oh, no, I'm starting to feel it." And I used to think, what's wrong with this woman? You know, is she a prude? You know, she doesn't know how to have a good time. I do not know what that feeling is. I cannot identify with that I'm starting to feel it and I don't want any more. You see, because when I start to feel it, that's when it's time for more. That's not when it's time to slow down. That's when it's time to put the pedal to the metal and let's pick it up, okay? You know, run with the big dogs or stay on the porch. You know, I was very proud of the fact that I could drink you under the table and do more dry goods, like they like to say. I don't know why we talk that way. We all know what we're talking about. Than anybody else. You know, and so, you know, I was headed for trouble, big trouble. And, you know, because I sat around with that ex-Marine, I said Marines are my best friends, you know. Because I sat around with that ex-Marine listening to how wonderful that military life was during the Vietnam War over in Vietnam, as soon as I turned 18, I joined the Army. Not because I was a patriot, because I was a dope fiend. That's the reason why. Because I wanted that lifestyle, you know, that went with it. And the Army's not too good about giving you what you want, but they sent me to Germany anyway, you know, and I found what I was looking for there, you know. And I found the gang. I always seem to find the right guys, you know, the right guys to run with. I'm real good at finding the right guys to run with, and I found those guys. And we proceeded to do business. And that business lasted for almost a couple of years until they started getting tired of us, you know, and put me out in 1973. Locked me up for 3 months. And I dried up and I cleaned up. And when I came out of the VA hospital in downtown Miami, I'd never been in Florida before, but my old man, who's a construction worker too, had took them all down there in '72 to work construction. And when I came out in the VA hospital, I walked out downtown Miami. I had a duffel bag full of uniforms, and I threw them in the dumpster. And I went to the taxi stand, and I told the cab driver, I said, "Take me to Pompano Beach." He said, "You mean Pompano Beach?" I says, "I don't know what the hell I mean. I never been to Florida before. Just take me there." Took me up there, and, you know, they took my rank away. They took my money away. And so I didn't have any money, and the old man, I don't think he really wanted me on his job site. He told me, "They're building a sewer plant down the street there. You can get a job down there." And they told me, you know, "Don't drink because you had hepatitis, and that'll your liver's already in trouble, so don't drink." And I was clean off of dope, and I didn't want to get back into that. But, you know, I was lonely because I didn't have no buddies or anything, and those guys on the job all day are talking about, well, you know, that's what construction workers do. They talk about on the job all day, they talk about the bar last night, and when they get to the bar, they talk about the job all day. So, you know, I says, I started hanging out with these guys, okay, and I ended up one night in Plantation, Florida with another vet at the VFW at a dance. You know, I was always a blackout guy, you know. I mean, me and blackouts go way back. First time I ever drank, I went in a blackout. Woke up in the weeds with puke all over me. You know, that's pretty much my drunk-a-log, you know. Wake up in the weeds with puke all over you out of a blackout. Or then it became jail cells. Well, when I first got to AA, you know, a lot of stuff hadn't happened to me yet. I hadn't been to jail yet, you know. But that changed. And the last I remember was we had our own bottles of vodka. He had his, I had mine, quarts. And the last I remember, we're rolling around on the ground outside just beating the hell out of each other. Until I came out of the blackout, and I was in a hospital room, laying on a gurney, and it was dark in there, and my face was killing me. And there was a sink in a mirror there, and I sat up and I looked at my face in the mirror, and my face was all black and blue, and my nose was split wide open. And I saw my clothes laying there on the chair, and the only thing I could think was, I need to leave. I need to get out of here. And I got up and I got those clothes on, and I tried to get out of that hospital. I was in Broward General Hospital in Fort Lauderdale on Sample Road. And the nurses got me before I could get to the door. And they said, "Where are you going?" I said, "I'm leaving." They said, "Well, you can't leave." I said, "Oh, yeah, I don't have any money to pay you or anything. I got to leave." No, they said, "No, you can't leave." I said, "Well, you're not going to stop me. I'm going to leave." She said, "No, we're not going to stop you. The state police are. They're here for you." Now, did you ever get this look from people when you say to them something like that, like, "Why do the police want me?" And they look at you like, "Are you crazy? You mean you don't know why? Why what? Why the police want me? You don't know? Know what? You don't know that you hit a carload of people out on Sample and Powerline Road? You know, in those days, that was the country. Nothing but bell peppers and lettuce and stuff. And I says, "I don't even have a car." They says, "Well, you were driving your buddy's car." And I said, "Well, or you were driving your buddy's pickup." I said, "Where's my buddy?" They said, "Well, he went through the windshield, and it took his whole eyebrow off. He doesn't have a right eyebrow anymore, and we sewed that up. We sent him home, and you broke the steering wheel with your face. That's what happened to you." But you see, the real problem is, there was a bunch of kids in that car, and they're going to need plastic surgery. You messed them up bad. And I want to tell you that for the first time, you see, I always tell people all the time, I wasn't just an alcoholic and a drug addict, I was a criminal too. I'd done a lot of crime. And I hurt a lot of people. And I turned a lot of people into addicts with needles in their arm, and a lot of them died. I'd done a lot of dirty crap in my life. Up to a very young age, at 21, I've been at it since I was 13, and before that, when I run with guys before I even picked up a drink. And I never felt remorse in my life until that day. And that day, I felt remorse because of what I'd done. And I was going to Broward Community College because there was no construction. There was a big recession going on, and to get a few $100 a month on the GI Bill and just stay drunk on and buy some weed on, taking an air conditioning course. And there was a Korean War veteran used to sit in the chair next to me, and he looked at my face and he wanted to know what happened to me. And wanted to know, I said I was in a big accident. He asked me if I wanted to have coffee with him after class that day. And I had no money, and I had to wait on the bus anyway. And so I said, okay. And we went to McDonald's, and he bought me a cup of coffee. And he started to talk to me about alcoholism. He was the first man that ever talked to me about alcoholism. Up to that point in my life, all people had ever talked to me about is, why don't you behave? Why don't you learn how to do the right thing? Why can't you be like your brother? Why can't you be a stand-up guy? Why can't you be, I have first sergeant all over me all the time. Why can't you be like the other guys? Why are you always in my orderly room? Why do I always have to give you Article 15s all the time? Why don't you do the right thing? Nobody ever talked to me about alcoholism, but that man did. And never told me he was an alcoholic. Never told me that he was in this program. I found that out later, and he became my first sponsor. His name was Kenny. He liked to play the horses. He used to 12-step me at the track while he handicapped. And on the way home that day, riding on the bus, and I was thinking to myself about what that man had told me, and I was trying to figure out what my problem was and why I kept having so many problems in my life. And a little voice, like a whisper inside my head, said, "You're an alcoholic like that man's talking about." And I said, "Yeah, that's right." And I went home, and we had phone books in those days. I got the phone book out. And I found AA real easy. It was right on the first page, AA. Intergroup, and I called, and there was a meeting down the street from my house that night, but the only thing I didn't like about it was in a Catholic church, and the nuns started on me in the second grade by grabbing my ears and shaking my head, and by the time the Christian brothers were done with me, in high school they were using their knuckles. So I wasn't too crazy for the clergy or the church, and I had hair down my back and a beard down to here, and I stood in the bushes, and I watched all these middle-aged squares walking into the back door of this church, and I was thinking to myself, what am I doing here? I'm 21, these people are all 40 and 50 years old. They don't even look nothing like me. Bunch of squares, all dressed up in ties and suits and stuff. And the greeter saw me. I always say the greeter that's the best job you can have as a greeter. Because the greeter saw me lurking outside in the bushes, and he went and got me. And he brought me inside, and he introduced me to everybody. And they were nice to me. And I liked it that these people were nice to me, because I was not used to people being nice to me, because I was not nice. I was the kind of guy that if you brought me to the bar where you drank, your bartender would tell you, don't bother coming back if you bring that SOB with you. Because I was one loudmouth, obnoxious, arrogant, crazy man who 5'7", and you put whiskey in me, and all of a sudden I turn into 7'5", and I may take one of them heavy ashtrays upside somebody's head or something. Because I thought you said something funny or looked at me funny. And so I thought, you know what? This is a pretty good deal around here. This is a pretty good deal, and these people are nice, and, you know, I'm going to have to go in front of a judge. And so it probably would behoove me to hang around here instead of hanging around in the bar. And so I'll hang around in these AA rooms. And I saw these steps up on the wall. And I agreed, yeah, I got a problem with alcohol. Got a problem with shooting dope, you know. But if I don't shoot dope and I don't drink alcohol, I don't have any problem. Case closed. And these people talk about what they needed to do, and I used to say, well, I don't need to do that. I don't need to do that. I know what I need to do. I know how to run my life. You know, and of course, Narcotics Anonymous didn't exist in those days. And the only place, AA was a lot more tolerant of dope fiends in those days. So we didn't have no place else to go. For the benefit of dope fiends in the rooms of AA, they used to say, in Alcoholics Anonymous, we don't drink and we don't take any mind or mood altering drugs. That was for the benefit of us dope fiends. And I could hardly wait for the meeting to get over so I could get out my car, reach in underneath the seat, pull my bag of weed out, roll me up a big fat one, start toking on it, and I'd tell myself, this doesn't alter my mind or my mood, it enhances it. This is a mind and mood enhancing drug. See, I tell you this story for a reason, so that you understand the thought process of this alcoholic. I am a rationalizer and a justifier to soothe my conscience and minimize my guilt and give me the ability to do whatever I think is necessary for me to do. Not what you think. Because after all, I run my life. You ain't running my life. See, I made up my mind a long time ago when I was a kid. Everybody wants you to look like them, talk like them, act like them, dress like them, do what they do, and I ain't having none of that. I'm doing whatever the hell I want to do. I'll pretend to be whatever you want me to be because I need to use you. Because that's the bottom line about this alcoholic. I'm a user and an abuser of drugs and alcohol and people, places, and things. I'll use anything to get things my way. That's the way I was. And so I hung around for about 10 months. Took that long to get in front of the judge. And the judge sat there and called me up and he asked me the $64,000 question. He said, "What's your problem, son?" And I said, "Well, Your Honor, I'm an alcoholic. That's what my problem was. I learned to say that in these rooms because that's what you wanted me to say, didn't you? You wanted me to say, my name's Tom and I'm an alcoholic, and if you want me to say that so I can use you to hang around here and get these cards signed or whatever you got to do, I'll do it." And so I sit up there and told him, I says, "Yeah, but, you know, I'm going to those meetings. I'm going to those meetings and I'm doing the right thing. And if you just give me a break, I promise you, you won't see me. I'm going to AA." And that judge, he did the worst thing he could have done. He gave me that break. Because, you see, I'm not the kind of guy you can give a break to. You can't give a break to a guy like me. Because what you do when you give me that break is you teach me that it works. That works, and I can work you. And I can work the system. And that's what I did for the next 10 years. And never got a year. And had time in every one of them. Because every time I get in a jackpot, I run back to Alcoholics Anonymous. And just to get my shit back, okay? That's all I was interested in. Let me get a license back. Let me get a car back. Let me get a job back. Let me get a girlfriend back. Let me get a place to live back. Let me get everything back. Just let me get it back. Once I got it back, I got right back to living the way I wanted to live. I didn't need this. But alcoholism, the disease of alcoholism, it's got a trick for you. That trick's called progression. And the periods of time that I could spend out there, they got shorter because I went to the bottom faster. And the periods of time that I could spend sitting in these rooms, they got shorter too, because it's hard to sit around in here and be so full of crap. Sober. You can't stand it. You can't stand yourself. You can't stand to listen to your mind tell you the truth. And you got to drink that away. And those months that once were, they turned into a couple of months, and then a month, and then weeks, and then days, until they turned into nothing but a day. And they couldn't even put a day together. After 10 years of doing this, and I'd sit in the rooms of AA, and I would tell the people, and then I'd be so scared. Do you know what my blackouts were terrible. Now I wasn't just having, they start out with the gray outs, where you remember a little bit from there, and then they turn into total blackouts, from the night before, and then they turn into a day, 2 days, coming out of a blackout, standing in a bar in a town 200 miles away and talking to somebody, and all of a sudden going, "Who are you? Where am I?" Come out of a blackout, driving in the middle of the night, way out in the woods somewhere, out in the Everglades, in the middle of nowhere in the sawgrass, driving all around like a maniac, trying to find a roadside just to tell you how to get home. Those blackouts. Blackouts coming out of a jail cell. Whew, man, ain't nothing worse than a blackout coming out of a jail cell. Not even knowing what you did to get put there. And my great idea in the end now, to control these blackouts and keep on drinking, is just keep shooting cocaine. If you got enough cocaine, you can drink all you want. That was my great idea. And I told the people, I'm not drinking. I'm done. I'm finished. And I meant that. I believed it when I said it. When I said that, I believed it. I get up, walk right down the street, walk into a bar and tell myself, I'm just going in here to listen to music, drink Coke, sit at the bar, looking at myself in the mirror, looking at the clock and say, you know what? I'll bet you if I keep my eye on that clock, I could make myself just drink for an hour. I don't care if a beautiful woman comes and sits next to me. I won't speak to her. I won't speak to the bartender. I won't speak to anybody. I'll stare at that clock, and I'll make myself just drink for an hour, and I'll get up from this bar, and I won't go in a blackout, and now it'll be different. You know how insane that is? How many years I've been telling myself that stuff, and here I am telling myself still this? They come out of a blackout in a jail cell on attempted burglary charges. And sitting around in that jail, sobering up, and sitting there and thinking to myself, what is my problem? Why do I keep having these problems? Why can't I straighten my life out? Why can't things be different? That little whisper came in my head again and said, you know what your problem is? You're crazy. The reason you're crazy is because you think you can run your life, but you can't. But you believe that you can, and that's why you're insane. And for the first time I said, yep, that's the truth about me. The truth about me is not only am I powerless over alcohol and drugs, but my life is unmanageable, which means my thinking doesn't work. Doesn't mean I get drunk and thrown in jail. That's what I wanted it to mean. What I wanted it to mean was, well, if I didn't drink, I managed my life. No. I'm 36 years sober, and my life's still unmanageable because I still have alcoholism. I don't have alcoholism. I have alcoholism. But it's not unmanaged. It's managed by a power greater than me through the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, a day at a time. Now I went back to that VA and I begged them to take me in. But I had an ulterior motive, you know. You always have an ulterior motive. I figure if I'm in a federal place, you know, the state's attorney of Florida is going to drop them charges, and he did. That worked. But things started to happen to me in there. Things started to happen to me. I had a first step finally under my belt. When I come out of there after 2 months being on anti-abuse and I came back to Delray Beach, Florida, I went to walk into the Central House, which has been around for 50-some years, 55 years now. And I went to walk through the door, and this old man was standing in the doorway. He wouldn't move aside for me to come in. And I looked at him, he looked at me, and he says, "Where are you going?" I said, "I'm going to the meeting." He said, "You don't want to get sober." I said, "Hell, I've been sober 2 months." He said, "Yeah, I heard up the VA on anti-abuse, that's easy. Well, what are you going to do now?" And I'm thinking, who the hell is this guy? What business he got standing in my way? I said, "What do you mean, what am I going to do now? What do you want me to do?" See? He says, "Well, all I want you to do is what I've been trying to tell you for years to do." And I'm thinking, I don't even know this guy. What's he talking about trying to tell me for years to do? And I said, "What's that?" And he said, "Get on your knees and ask God for the strength to stay clean and sober." And I'm still so defiant. Because I don't know about you, but this alcoholic's outstanding characteristic is defiance. And even after all I've been through, I'm still so defiant as to stand there and say to that man, "I don't see how that's going to do any good." And he looked me in the eye and he said, "How's your way been working, wise guy? How's your way been working for you? Your way been working for you?" And I'm so egotistical, all I can get out of me is, "Well, I guess you're right. I guess it ain't." And he told me the best thing anybody in AA ever told me. He said, "Then I guess what you believe in doesn't make any difference then, does it? Because what you believe in doesn't work." So you know what? I'm not asking you to believe. This isn't about what you're willing to believe. This is about what are you willing to do. Are you just willing to get on your knees and ask God for the strength to stay clean and sober? Try and be sincere. Can you just try and be sincere? You don't have to believe a damn thing. Just take the action. I says, "Yeah, I can do that. Get a job. Go to work. Go to a meeting. Get a sponsor. Get a home group. Get active. And try to stop being a liar, a cheat, and a thief." And I thought, is he talking to me? I'm not. I'm a nice guy. I'm not a liar, cheat, and a thief. And that's what I did, and I lived with the obsession of drinking and use for months. I don't know how long. And I'm a laborer, a ditch digger my whole life, and I was digging ditches for the plumbers underneath a building up in Palm Beach. And I came out from under there one day, and I walked down the street at lunchtime to get me a sandwich, and when I came out of the 7-Eleven, there was a car sitting there, and I looked in the car. There was 2 construction workers sitting in there, and I looked in. They had the window open. I looked in at their front seat, and they had quarts of beer between their legs, and they had that Frisbee turned up, and they were cleaning the seeds, you know, and my eyes glued on that, because that used to be me every lunchtime, a quart of beer and a reefer, you know. And I go walking down the street, and I start thinking to myself, them guys getting high. They're getting high, those guys are. I got up underneath that building, and I sat down in the ditch in the dark under there by myself eating that sandwich, and I started thinking, I ain't thought about getting high. I can't remember when the last time was that I thought about getting high. I've been thinking about it day in and day out since I was 13 years old. All them years in and out, round AA. I'd never stop thinking about it. When's the next time going to be? Where am I going to get it from? Who am I going to do it with? What's it going to feel like? The thinking about it. The thinking about it. That's the obsession, the thinking about it. And now I couldn't remember when the last time was I thought about it. And all of a sudden I started to cry. and got chills all over my body. Because I understood that my God did love me. And He'd taken that from me. And He was so smooth when He did it, I didn't even know it was gone. He showed me. See, I thought I was so bad and done so much bad that God had no use for me. But He had never left me. I'd left Him. I came to believe that day. I came to believe in a power greater than myself that was going to restore me to sanity, and was restoring me. I got down on my knees with that old man after the men's meeting on Sunday morning after the other men left. I did the third step. I kept looking at the doorway, seeing if any of the guys were going to walk in, me kneeling, holding this old man's hand, okay? Ever since that time, Alcoholics Anonymous, you know, I talked about Alcoholics Anonymous, people that crossed over a line into alcoholism. I never crossed over a line into alcoholism. People that were restored to a life that they once knew. I wasn't restored to a life that I once knew. Alcoholics Anonymous has given me a life I never knew. Never. I never knew the life that this program has given me. I've had everything I needed. Not everything I wanted. But thank God I didn't have the things I wanted, because they weren't shit compared to the things I got that my God gave me. See, I don't know what I need. I only know what I want. I had to figure that out. You don't have to figure out a lot, but you got to figure out one thing. You got to figure out your way don't work. And stop going on your own thinking. I had to surrender. Surrender is the key. Acceptance ain't the key. Surrender is. Yeah, can't even get to acceptance without surrendering. I have to surrender. I surrendered my life and my will over to the care of God. I remember I took my wife, I married my wife in 1989, met her in the program. I've been sober since '83, and I took her back to Peoria, Illinois to my 20th high school reunion. And a lot of my classmates, it wasn't a big Catholic high school, only about 360 kids. I think I was the last one in the class that graduated. They just want to get rid of me, you know. So they gave me a diploma. And they wanted me to get up and say a few words about a couple of people that had passed away. One of them was a girl I was in love with my whole life, or all through high school, that I wanted to marry, that died with another guy drunk in a motorcycle accident. And the other one was the guy who started me on drugs, who became one of the biggest drug dealers in central Illinois. And they found him. He had hideouts all over, farmhouses where he'd hide out. He was the first guy I ever seen with a beeper. 1974, and he had 2 beepers. Took me down in the basement when I went back to Peoria from Florida. I went in the basement, and the basement was filled to the ceiling with bales of Colombian marijuana. He said, "You want to go to work for me?" I said, "Sure." They found him buck naked in the snow with his heart blown up from cocaine outside one of his farmhouses. So they asked me to talk, just you know, not talk about alcoholism, or not, just talk about them. And so I got up, and because I started with a joke, I told a slightly off-color Irish joke about 2 Irish laborers across the street from the house of ill repute, you know. I won't go into that, but after it was over and everybody was broke up, you know, and laughing, and told a few remembrances, Monsignor Jerry Ward started heading my way. I grew up with him. He was total opposite of me, a bookworm, head of the student council, drama club, you know. I ran with the hoodlums. He was valedictorian. He got a scholarship to Notre Dame, went to the seminary, and now he's a Monsignor of St. Patrick's Church downtown. And I think Father Jerry's going to ream my ass, right? He starts heading my way, you know, and he gets up to me, and I said, "Oh, Jerry, I hope you weren't upset about that joke." And he said, "No, I think I'm going to use that. That's a good joke." He said, "That's not what I wanted to ask you about." I said, "What do you want to ask me about?" And he said, "Well, I heard you're a friend of Bill's." And I says, "I am." And he says, "So am I." He said, "You know, Tom, I thought I knew all about God, but I completely lost my faith. Hearing confessions and giving communion, and I didn't even believe in God anymore. I was that priest that you were making the joke about. And I thought I knew all about God, but the people at AA brought me to God. They taught me what I thought I knew my whole life. Alcoholism doesn't care who you are, where you come from. Doesn't care if you're black, white, brown, yellow, red, how much money you got, Park Avenue or Park Bench. Alcoholism's an equal opportunity employer if you want to work for them. I sure appreciate you all listening tonight. Thanks.
Let's thank our speaker one more time. We've escorted him to the back of the room. Please, on your way out, take a minute and just thank him for giving of himself today, just out of respect. I'd like to thank you for allowing me to be of service. Let's join